Welcome to Inspired Astrology. I'm Dominique Danyail, and this is your Taroscope for the 2020 Gemini New Moon. Now, I know that 2020 has so far been a pretty crazy year, right? It's been wild, a lot of intense energy, so many things going on that went so much further than we all thought possible, right? However, this new moon, I feel, is a really nice opportunity. It's kind of like that little crack in the window that allows some fresh air in. And if we use this energy, we can really benefit and establish some things in our life that are going to be long-term structures that bring us more happiness and fulfillment. And hey, that's what it's all about. So I want to talk briefly about the Gemini new moon and some of the influences that are at play, and then I'll hop into a tarot reading. So the first thing I want to bring up is that the moon is at 2 degrees in the sign of Gemini. We also have a Mercury-Venus conjunction at 20 degrees of Gemini, and we also have the North Node in Gemini. That's a whole lot. That's a whole lot of Gemini energy, right? There's going to be a large emphasis on communication, relationships, communication within the context of relationships. We also have a square coming over from Neptune, which is sitting at 20 degrees of Pisces. That's squaring that Mercury-Venus conjunction. We also have Mars at 6 degrees of Pisces, which is squaring the new moon conjunction. And then we have some favorable aspects coming from Jupiter, Saturn, as well as Pluto. So let's break that down for a bit. First thing I want to talk about is this energy in Gemini. So right now, we are being called, I believe, as a collective to really step into a higher level of communication that's focused on bringing value to the collective, that's focused on also building a sense of community, using our communication and building those relationships within our local area. Of course, the South Node being in Sagittarius, that puts a bit of a strain on the long distance type of travel, right? In those foreign type of relations. But the emphasis right now is really on our local communities, our local environment, and our ability to use our communication and our skills to bring value. Now, Venus right now is retrograde, which means that there's a lot more of an inward focus on what makes us feel a sense of worth and value, especially in relationships, because Venus is a big indicator of relationships. And so, with this being in a conjunction with Mercury and Mercury being in its home sign of Gemini, there's going to be a whole lot of communication about relationships, us really talking about what we want and what we desire, what we value from a deep sense of knowing what's most important to us. So this is really an important time for self-worth, and it's important that we have that self-expression because that is crucial to our growth at this time, especially because the North Node is in Gemini. This is telling all of us as a collective that using our communication, honest communication, to build authenticity in our relationships and the way that we show up based on our internal value system and not things that are outside of us is really what's going to be needed for us to move forward in a way that makes us feel whole and fulfilled. So that square coming over from Neptune in Pisces, right? That's squaring the Mercury-Venus conjunction. That can lead to a little bit of a smoke and mirrors type of effect, right? So we might hear something, interpret it a certain way. It could be completely intended to be one way, but so look out for miscommunications. Also, Neptune can bring up lies, right? Untruths or things that are stretched a little bit farther. You think you're looking at something, you think you know what you're looking at, but you really don't know, right? Because there's this kind of a misty haze over it. So that's kind of the effect of Neptune. So miscommunications can run amok at this point. Square is a bit of a challenging aspect, especially to our relationships, the way that we're communicating, the way we hear things. And so let's talk about Mars, because Mars is also in Pisces. Pisces is not in particular the best placement for Mars, right? Because Mars is a very fiery, driven, action-oriented energy, and Pisces is a very watery, kind of dissociative and spiritual sign, a very light sign. And so this can also, because Mars is actually making a square to the new moon conjunction, this can bring in some pretty, reactive emotions, right? We might hear something, it triggers us, and then bam, we fire off, right? So it's important that we remember these influences and that we're aware of it. So if you are feeling triggered, you take that step back. Um, Mars is it's a fiery energy, so it's passionate. So while we're communicating, we can be very passionate, but it also, because of the Pisces influence and because Neptune is in Pisces, its home sign, there's going to be a lot of emotional communication at this time. Being that this is aspecting the moon, right, which is how we feel inside our minds. It's important to watch out for those anger outbursts. We might feel a little bit more reactive and impulsive at this time. Now, it's not all bad that Neptune is making a square to the Mercury-Venus conjunction, and that Mars is making a square to the new moon, and that Mars is in Pisces. We can actually look at this in a completely different way. The benefit of Mars being in Pisces right now is that we can actually use that inner drive to pull out those emotions that maybe we haven't expressed because we've just been on the go and focused on all these things outside of ourselves. And so using our Mars energy to cry, express those emotions in a healthy way. You don't have to throw a dish across the room. Maybe you just have a good cry. Put on some music that makes you get all up in your feelings, right? This is a really good way to help you access those emotions and allow Mars to just pour it out. This can be very cleansing. This can help to resolve some tensions that have been brought up. Being that there is a lot of Neptunian energy, this can bring up nostalgia, thinking about exes, or even thinking about past wounds or things that have happened in the past. And so with that being triggered, the miscommunications, we have to be compassionate to ourselves and think about our emotional state, right? And so Neptune can actually help us to bring in a higher spiritual perspective and look at ourselves and our situation through the eyes of love, developing that sense of awareness through self-compassion. That's the beauty of this square, these two squares, the square from Neptune and the square coming from Mars. So I invite you to use your Mars, tap into your spiritual side, watch out for the tendency to want to escape, right? Sometimes things they feel unbearable, they feel like we can't handle it. And if you're not careful, Neptune can kind of make us want to detach. And how do we do that in an unhealthy way? Well, you might turn to something like alcohol or some type of addiction, watching a bunch of TV or being on social media constantly. So if you find yourself falling into those patterns of escapism and not really wanting to be in the here and now and deal with the current situation, just distracting yourself with a bunch of mercurial or Neptunian pursuits, just be mindful of that. Remember to use that Mars before it goes into Aries, right, which is super go mode. Use it now to release the stuff that you don't need anymore, right? Neptune is in Pisces. Pisces rules the 12th house. That's where we release. That's where we let go. We give it back to the creator, right? So this is a beautiful opportunity to do some healing. Also remember that Chiron at this time is actually in the sign of Aries, which is ruled by Mars. So again, we are able to really heal some identities if we've been caught up in things like codependence, and that's been contributing to some of the trauma over the years. This is a time where we can really use forgiveness and compassion to release those things. So allow yourself to tap into your Neptunian, your Martian energy, use that Chiron to heal those fragmented pieces of your ego, to call back all the pieces of you that maybe you gave to someone else, that allowing other people to have power over your emotions or over the way you show up. Call that back to yourself. That's the beauty of this new moon, because we are preparing ourselves to move into a whole new level of expression and being in the world. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is that we have a trine, kind of a trine coming over from the conjunction between Jupiter and Pluto. Now, Jupiter and Pluto are both retrograde right now. And again, of course, retrograde just means that they're more inwardly focused. So we're kind of going back over, refining things. And the great thing about having this trinal kind of aspect, because Jupiter is at 27 degrees of Capricorn, Pluto's at 24 degrees of Capricorn. So it's not an exact trine, but it's close enough to, I think, that it's worth mentioning. When I think of Jupiter retrograde, I think of inner optimism and being intrinsically motivated to push forward and create something beautiful. And having that Pluto aspect there is being able to transform our situation. So this is a great time while the moon is dark, before you see that first little crescent in about 3 or 4 days. Use this energy to look around in your life, at those things that you want to let go of. Use that Jupiterian energy. Find out how you can be intrinsically motivated to not only release things, but to start creating some new things, which is why the next thing I want to talk about is Saturn retrograde. Saturn being retrograde is going over plans again, right? Saturn is in Aquarius at 1 degree, and it is also making a trine to this new moon. Saturn can really help us to put in action some type of plan to build some type of communication structure. So right now we are really looking at changing the way we communicate. Obviously, a lot of things are going digital, are going online, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we are more separate. Of course, there's a lot of this idea of separation within the collective, but so many people are coming together in new ways. You see people having, more and more classes online, different types of gatherings of all sorts, so many different creative ideas. There are, I believe, going to be a lot of new social platforms, probably dating sites and things where people can make friends and build a sense of community. And this is because of Saturn being in Aquarius. Aquarius is very futuristic. Aquarius, it rules the internet, of course, because it's ruled by Uranus. And Uranus is in Taurus right now, which is ruled by Venus, again in Gemini. So there's this kind of tie-in to us being able to use technology to bridge that gap between the gap we're feeling between one another right now, to build a sense of community. And Saturn, because it's making a trine to this new moon, that means it's a favorable aspect. So we can really lay down a solid plan. What do you want to create? Maybe you're launching a new platform that can help people come together, connect, or some kind of app or a program, or, writing a book, teaching a course, whatever it is. Using Saturn can actually help you to go back over that plan because it's retrograde. So we're looking for different errors and things like that. Keep in mind that there is a bit of a sextile between the Jupiter-Pluto conjunction and Neptune. So be mindful of little errors and things that you might not catch. Again, Neptune brings that haze, but Saturn is going to help you look over all the details, go back over the fine lines of what you're working on and see where you can refine that plan and really solidify it, because when things get moving forward again, you will hit the ground running and you have a really great opportunity. So if you're writing a book, if you're starting a business, starting a blog, maybe starting a YouTube channel, any type of mercurial pursuit, this is also a great time if you are learning a new skill, taking a course, going back to school. All of these things can really flourish if you are willing to use this energy at this time. So I didn't talk about the North Node, and I'll talk about that just briefly. The North Node, being at 29 degrees of Gemini, again, is bringing our soul's intention, our soul's focus at this time is on communication, is on our local environment, is on developing skills, learning. The South Node being in Sagittarius means that we might be questioning some of the belief systems that we've been holding for the past decade or so. At this time, you might find yourself a little more curious, dabbling in some different things, not really committing to any one thing in particular at the moment, because you're learning, you're curious, and the cosmic energies are supporting that right now, because we need to be able to do that in order to grow. If we stick to what our beliefs are and we never move from that spot, we can kind of get stuck in that. So being that the South Node is in Sagittarius, the North Node is in Gemini, there is a shift towards being curious, learning new things, questioning your beliefs, maybe forming some new perspectives on things that will later form into beliefs. And so again, that's the beauty of this transit. So just to summarize really quickly, we're going to be focused on communication within the context of relationships, releasing relationships and identities of the past that no longer serve where we're going, and doing that in a sense of peace, no hard feelings. Over this weekend, when the energy might get really high, make sure that you take that step back. Know that you don't have to have any particular conversation right now. It might not be the best time. You might want to wait until this Neptunian energy moves on a little bit, so that you can have that sense of clarity. And we're also making peace with our past. We're looking at how we can approach communication and community building differently going forward. The great thing about Jupiter is that, yeah, in order to make a shift and make a change and transform our situation, we do kind of have to take the leap. We have to step out on a limb and do something different, radically different from what we've done before. But there is a blessing in being able to trust and know that things are working out to your highest good. And that's what I feel Jupiter retrograde and that trinal aspect is kind of telling us. So this is about developing self-trust, becoming centered and firm, grounded in who you are, developing your own sense of confidence and knowing what's true for you, and allowing other people to have their truth as well. Taking things right now with a grain of salt, realizing that everybody has something to say right now. Not necessarily all of it is true, and it doesn't matter if it's true or not. What matters is, are you doing what you came here to do? Are you doing what makes you happy? So now let's go on over and take a look and see what the tarot has to say about all of this. So I've decided to pull 3 cards from the Rider-Waite deck. And then I'm going to use the Archangel Michael deck as just a general advice card. Okay, so we have here there we go, the 6 of Pentacles. This is what's emerging within us at this time of the new moon. And the 6 of Pentacles, I like to think of this card as really striking that balance between what we value. So right now we're doing a little bit of a self-evaluation, as Venus is, of course, retrograde. We're looking at our own sense of worth and value. How much of our energy, our time, and our resources are going to the things that make us feel most fulfilled, and how much of that is going out to the people we love and care about and feel somewhat responsible for, right? So I love this card because in one hand, you see he's got the scales of balance, right? So he's weighing out, what are my resources and what can I actually contribute that would be beneficial to the people who I care about, but also not leave me feeling completely depleted. There has to be some sense of boundaries and balance, right? So that we can actually have it to give. It's not helpful if so much of your energy goes to other people to the point where you feel completely depleted. So I think right now what's emerging within us is this willingness to take an honest look and see how we can be of service to all the different parts of our life, and being able to see what is most valuable to us, and realizing that the universe is abundant, right? And it's up to us what we do with that abundance. So how do we divvy up what we're given, and so that we can be of service to ourselves and others? And so I really like this card because there's an emerging awareness of how we can be of service what is needed in the collective and to go out, what parts of ourself have we maybe neglected, and how can we balance our energy? So yeah, while we're out there making plans, Gemini is a very busy energy, very mentally busy, busy, busy. You're probably getting all kinds of ideas for stuff you want to do. It may be hard to sleep at this time, especially if, like me, you have a moon in Gemini. Wow. So it's a lot of energy, but how much of that is going to the parts of ourself that may have been overlooked? Like, look at this guy over here. His clothes are all ripped and torn. Maybe that's a part of ourself that has been like, hey, I'm tired, or I want to take a walk, or can we just chill and read a book? Do we have to, like, create stuff and work every single day? Like, maybe that part of you that needs some self-care. So we're looking at those areas of our life. I believe that all of these are kind of like examples of ourself, right? So what part of you really needs that attention? What part of you hasn't been getting that attention? How can we focus a little bit more on self-care and using that Venus to go back over and see what is most important? Where should we be expending more energy? Where do we need to pull back a little bit so that we can be in balance? So the next question that I had is, where can we really grow using this new moon energy to grow this month? And I have here the Eight of Pentacles, and it's reversed. And what I love about this card is the level of diligence of this person just working on their craft. I'm going to flip it upright so that you can see the card. This diligent working and building something and not really being overly concerned with the details, but just being at peace in the process, mindfulness. So because this is reversed, I think that this signifies that one of the ways we can grow is to really tap into the love of the craft itself, and not so much all the fine details of, does this look right? What are they going to think about it? Is it carved? Did I carve the pentacle correctly into the slab of stone or whatever he's got on this bench here? There is such a beauty and a value when you do things from a place of centeredness because you love doing them. And I think that sometimes if we find ourselves working, if the work that we're doing is not bringing us a sense of fulfillment, then we can get into a pattern of just going through the motions, and that is draining. So where we're growing right now, because we have this first card where we're learning how to really balance those energies and where we really apply our time, right, and our motivation to bring things into the physical plane. This is all about us manifesting. Here we're going to be able to grow this month because we'll be a little bit more mindful about the things we do and allowing the process of creation itself. This is about the creative process, and because we have this Neptunian energy, there's a huge explosion of creativity, music, art, all kinds of different creativity that's going to be just exploding into the collective right now. So this is our growth card for the month. And the next card I am going to pull is an advice card, just to give us some guidance on how we can go about finding that sense of mindfulness and fulfillment and just enjoying the beauty of what we're doing. Whoops, that one actually jumped right out of my hand. Wow. Pulled the devil card. Okay. So, and it was upright. So this tells me that the advice is to let go of things that are holding you back, but that they're illusions. Each of us has a choice of how we show up every single day, and we also get to choose what we allow to take place in our life. So if you are attached to a person, place, thing, or idea that is draining you and that is not really taking you where you want to go, and with all of these influences, this Neptunian energy, spirit is communicating to you. Those things in your life that are not healthy for you, and the things that maybe there's been, this tendency to kind of make excuses and to gloss things over and say, well, it's bad, but it's not that bad, right? Like, let's be honest with ourselves about the things that we know we need to break away from. And I think that if we can do that, then we'll have a better idea of what our own needs are. It's hard to focus on your own needs if you're in, say, a codependent relationship, or if you're dealing with an addiction. And it doesn't have to be an addiction to alcohol or drugs. It could be an addiction to anything. You could be addicted to work. You could be addicted to dieting. It could be literally anything. So the interesting thing about this card is, I wish I could get a little bit clearer. They have chains around their necks, but the chains are loose. Like, if you see how loose those chains are, they could literally just pop their heads out of there and walk away. So, this is choosing to be in something that is gratifying on some type of physical level. There's so much earth energy here. All of these are pentacles, of course. The devil represents Capricorn. There's a earthy pool. So this month I invite you to use that Neptunian energy. Neptune is like the refiner's fire. It helps us to break away from things that we don't need anymore and to detach from that so that we can move into a higher level of being. So I'm just going to pull one card from the Archangel Michael deck just for an inspiring message to close it out. This is beautiful. It says, situation is already resolved. Okay. The situation is already resolved. Remember what I was telling you about? Trust yourself. Know that if you take that step forward from your gut wisdom, gut being Mars, wisdom being Pisces and Neptune, right? Mars and Neptune, use your gut wisdom to guide you. You know what you need. You know what the right next step is. Don't be afraid to do what you know you need to do, and know that everything is already working out in your highest favor. This card is just a confirmation of that. It says, I give any worries, cares, and concerns to you in exchange for true peace in all ways. Thank you for resolving this situation in a divinely perfect way. So I think that is a beautiful way to end this Taroscope. I really hope that you enjoyed this and that you found this inspiring. And I will be back to do another one of these when we get to the first quarter moon. So make sure you tune in for that. If you like this video, please give it a like. Remember to subscribe and share this with someone you care about. Until next time, be love and be free.